Okay, let's dive right in. Think about your mind like a computer, an operating system. What if I told you there's a hidden bug in your mental software? A piece of primitive code that's running in the background, and it's quietly sabotaging your most important decisions. Well, today, we're going to find it, we're going to diagnose it, and we're going to install a critical upgrade.
So, does this sound familiar? You're staring down a huge life choice. Maybe it's a new job, a big move, a relationship change, and you just freeze. You get trapped in this endless loop of pros and cons, and you're completely paralyzed by the pressure of getting it right. Here's the thing, though. That feeling? It isn't some personal failure on your part. It's actually a symptom of a fundamental bug in your programming.
All right, so let's get into the diagnosis. The problem really isn't you, it's the software we're all running on. See, we're using an outdated operating system, one that just wasn't built for the complexities of the modern world. And the most primitive, the most fundamental bug in that whole system, well, it has a name.
It's called binary thinking. This is that old, clunky code that forces you to simplify absolutely everything into just two opposing options. It's a crude, low-resolution filter that sees the entire world as either a simple 1 or a 0, on or off, yes or no.
And this is where the fundamental conflict happens. Our binary lens, it forces us to see only success or failure, right or wrong, win or loss. But reality? Reality isn't binary at all. It's a high-resolution, totally fluid landscape of probabilities and potential outcomes. It's not a neat list of absolute certainties.
This right here, this quote gets to the absolute heart of the problem. That anxiety you feel when you're making a big decision, that's the tension. That's the feeling of trying to cram the infinite, messy complexity of real life into this tiny, restrictive black and white box. It's an impossible fit, and deep down, your mind knows it.
So what are the actual real-world symptoms of running this cognitive bug? Well, it leads to total paralysis, and it does that because it makes us chase something that literally doesn't exist, a guarantee.
Your binary mind is screaming at you, right? Find the one guaranteed right answer. But in a world that's built on probabilities, there are no guarantees. This desperate hunt for certainty, it's a catastrophic failure of high-performance thinking, and it leads directly to something called strategic stagnation, which is just a fancy way of saying that feeling of being completely and utterly stuck.
So how in the world do we fix this bug? Well, we need an upgrade. It's time to shift our entire way of thinking, away from the false comfort of certainty, and instead lean into the powerful reality of probability. This is the core of the mental software update we're talking about.
This means changing our fundamental goal. For years, we've been trained to search for the right answer, like it's some kind of buried treasure. The upgrade is to ditch that hunt completely. Instead, we're going to start calculating expected values, which just means understanding all the likely outcomes and what their probabilities are.
This new approach is called systems thinking, and it requires a pretty big shift. We have to delete that old default question our brain always asks, will this work? Honestly, it's a useless question, because the answer is almost never a simple yes or no. To really think in systems, we need a much better, much smarter question.
And here's where it gets really interesting. When you start asking better questions, you don't just change how you think, you actually upgrade your entire identity. You evolve from being someone who's just at the mercy of chance into someone who actively architects their own outcomes.
See, without this upgrade, you're pretty much a gambler. You're just hoping for luck, waiting for a guarantee that's never going to come. And that leads to stagnation. The alternative, though, is to become a decision architect, someone who masters probabilistic thinking and doesn't just hope for good outcomes, but actually builds these systems that create them.
And this, right here, is the central tool of the decision architect. Instead of asking that old question, will it work? You ask this. What is the probability distribution of this outcome? What are all the possible results? What's the best case scenario, the worst case, and the most likely scenario? This one question completely shatters the low-resolution box of binary thinking. So, this is the final, crucial question it all comes down to. As you face your next big decision, which identity are you going to choose? Are you going to remain the gambler, paralyzed by that impossible search for a guarantee that doesn't exist, or are you going to install the upgrade and become the architect of your own future? The choice is yours.
All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about a fundamental flaw in our mental software, something I call the certainty trap. It's this hidden bug in our thinking that just keeps us stuck. And in this explainer, we're going to figure out how to upgrade our neural OS and finally fix it. You know that feeling, right? You're staring down a huge choice, a career change, a big move, a major life decision. You've done all the research, you've made the pro-con lists, but you're just frozen, totally paralyzed by the weight of it all. Well, that feeling, it has a name. It's the certainty trap. It's this deep biological craving for a guaranteed 100% safe path forward. You see, our neural OS is literally wired to want certainty because, certainty feels safe. But here's the problem. In any complex system, and let's be honest, life is a complex system, that 100% safe path, it just doesn't exist. So what's really causing this trap? Well, it turns out it's the most primitive bug in our entire neural operating system, a flaw that's been baked into our programming from the very beginning. And that bug is called binary thinking. It's this tendency to see our incredibly complex, high-resolution world through a really crude, low-resolution lens. Everything gets flattened into a simple 1 or a 0. Success or failure, right or wrong. We try to force this messy, beautiful reality into these tiny little boxes. And the cost of thinking this way is just staggering. This bias causes us to ignore about 90% of the data that's all around us. Why? Because most information isn't a simple yes or a simple no. It's nuanced. It has shades of gray. And our binary filter just throws it all out. Think about it this way. Imagine you're trying to find your way through a dark, unfamiliar room. It's full of furniture, obstacles. You really need to see the details to get through without breaking your shin, right? But the only tool you have is this flashlight with just 2 settings, blindingly bright or completely off. There's no dimmer switch. You can't see the shadows. You can't see the edges. You miss all the crucial details. Well, that's exactly what binary thinking does to your ability to see a complex problem clearly. And this bug? It has some very real, very painful costs. The first one is something we can call cognitive anxiety. It's that feeling of your mind just collapsing under pressure because it can't find that 100% safe path it so desperately wants. And this mental freeze leads to total systemic rigidity, that awful feeling of being completely and utterly stuck. So this brings us to a really critical question. What are you basing your big decisions on? You see, without this mental upgrade, most of us base our life-altering choices on emotional variance, which is really just a fancy way of saying how we happen to feel in the moment. The goal, though, is to shift to making choices based on statistical advantage, on what the data actually suggests is the most probable path to success. So how do we fix the bug? We need an upgrade. It's time to reboot our neural OS with a brand new core principle. And this one comes from systems thinking. It's all about learning to see the world not as a bunch of certainties, but as a landscape of probabilities. This quote right here is the absolute heart of the upgrade. We have to stop searching for the right answer like it's some kind of hidden treasure chest. Because in a complex world, there are no certainties. Instead, there are only expected values, the probable outcomes of any action we might take. This is the new way of seeing things. Reality isn't some fixed black and white picture. It's more like a fluid, ever-shifting landscape of probabilities. And our job isn't to find one single safe spot to stand on, but to learn how to surf the waves. Now, this upgrade, it transforms our very identity as decision makers. It's a fundamental shift from being a passive gambler, just kind of hoping for the best, to becoming an active decision architect, someone who designs the best possible outcomes. And this whole transformation, it starts with the core question we ask ourselves. See, the gambler asks a simple binary question. Will this work? Yes or no? But the architect asks a much more powerful, more sophisticated question. What is the probability distribution of this outcome? And listen, this isn't just playing with words. It's a complete shift in how you engage with the world. The gambler is operating on hope and fear. They're basically a slave to the coin flip. The decision architect, on the other hand, operates on calculation and strategy. They're designing the system. So the gambler is always a slave to that coin flip, constantly searching for that mythical right answer that just doesn't exist. They are, in a very real sense, probability blind. This is the person who passes on a huge opportunity that has an 80% chance of success because they just can't stomach that 20% risk of failure. The decision architect, however, is the master of probabilities. They're probability sighted. They see the odds clearly. They calculate those expected values, and they consistently place their bets where they have a real statistical advantage. So all of this leads us to a final, really critical question for you. And this isn't just some intellectual exercise. It's a challenge to fundamentally change how you operate in the world. Think of it this way. So many of us are running a world-class engine. I'm talking about your mind, your talent, your incredible potential. But we're keeping it in first gear. We refuse to accelerate, we refuse to shift up because we are absolutely terrified of a tiny 1% chance the engine might stall. We're sacrificing all that forward momentum for this complete illusion of safety. So, the final question is for you. You have that world-class engine right there, waiting. Are you going to stay stuck in first gear? Or are you ready to finally shift? All right, let's talk about the mental operating system that pretty much runs our entire lives, our decision-making. We're going to explore how just one single upgrade in the way we think can take us from feeling completely paralyzed to acting with real power and clarity. You've been there, right? I mean, we all have. That feeling of being totally stuck, looking at all these different paths, and just terrified you're going to pick the wrong one. It's a human thing. But what if the issue isn't the decision at all? What if it's the software you're using to make it? Okay, so let's think about this in a way that makes sense. Picture your mind as a neural OS, this complex operating system. And just like any OS, it can have bugs. And the one we're going to talk about today, it's probably the most basic and the most damaging of them all. Yeah, this bug has a name, binary thinking. It's kind of the default setting for most of us, this unconscious habit that just forces us to see everything in black and white. So what does that actually look like day to day? Well, it looks like this. A super crude 1 or 0 lens on the world. Every single situation is either a total success or a complete failure. A choice is either right or it's wrong. You either win or you lose. In the world of high-performance psychology, the study of how the best of the best think and act, this isn't just simplifying things too much. It's a catastrophic error in how you see reality. So what happens when we're running this buggy software all the time? Well, we fall into what we can call the certainty trap. It's like this mental prison that we build for ourselves, brick by brick, with every single binary choice we try and force. This slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got reality, this beautiful, high-res, fluid landscape of possibilities and nuance. But our binary thinking on the other side tries to cram that entire landscape into this tiny, low-resolution box. We're desperately looking for a guarantee, a certainty that just doesn't exist. And that mismatch, that's where all the anxiety and paralysis comes from. And the end result of that endless search for the right answer is always the same. We don't do anything. We get trapped in analysis paralysis, just waiting for some perfect sign that is never, ever going to show up. And that is strategic stagnation. It's the absolute death of progress. But here's the good news. Every bug can be patched. We can actually upgrade our neural OS. And the patch is this total paradigm shift, moving away from certainty and towards a model that is so much more powerful, thinking in probabilities. Okay, so here's the big shift. Systems thinking teaches us that every single action we take is basically a bet. There are no sure things. Probabilistic thinking is the tool we use to figure out how good those bets are. It lets us calculate the expected value, which is just the potential reward of a decision multiplied by its chances of succeeding. You stop being a gambler who just reacts to whatever happens, and you start becoming an architect who designs for success. And this right here, this slide, is the entire game changer. On the left, you've got the gambler, the amateur, asking a binary question. Will this work? Yes or no? But on the right, you have the decision architect, the pro, asking a much smarter question. What is the range of possible outcomes here, and what's the probability of each one? They're thinking in spectrums, not switches. And when you change your question like that, something really profound happens. You completely refactor the choice itself. You're not playing defense anymore, frozen by the fear of being wrong. Now you're on the offense, making bold, calculated moves based on pure logic and probability. No, this whole upgrade isn't just about making smarter strategic moves. It comes with a massive psychological reward. It is the key to unlocking the state of emotional resilience, a state we can call the unshakable calm. With our new OS running, we can start by totally tearing down the old definition of failure. Let's say you made a decision that had an 80% chance of success, and let's say it doesn't work out. You hit that 20% window. Was the decision wrong? No, absolutely not. It wasn't a systemic error. It had nothing to do with how smart you are or what you're worth. It was simply the 20% possibility becoming real. It's just statistical noise, a totally normal part of the game. Statisticians have a word for it: variance. And understanding that difference, really, truly getting it deep down, that is the source of that unshakable calm. You completely detach your emotions from the random result of one single outcome because you know you played the odds right. So this is the new rulebook for how you measure yourself. You no longer judge yourself based on the roll of the dice. You judge yourself on the quality of your thinking, on the rigor of your process. You controlled what you could control, and honestly, the rest is just math. So this all leads us to the final transformation. When you consistently operate with this upgraded mental software, you start to take on a whole new identity. You're not just making decisions anymore. You are literally architecting your own future. I mean, just look at this transformation. The journey is from being the old you, basically a victim of random luck, to becoming the new you, the master of the long game. You understand that over time, a solid process will always beat bad luck. And what that really means is you're no longer so exposed, so vulnerable to chance. You're protected. You're insulated by the mathematical certainty that a sound, probabilistic process is going to lead to good results in the long run. Which leaves us with one last powerful question to think about. What's a decision you're facing right now, big or small? Instead of asking yourself, is this right or wrong, how are you going to re-architect it using the power of probabilities?
You know that feeling, right? You're facing a huge decision, and you just feel paralyzed, stuck. You're running a million scenarios in your head, and you can't move. Well, what if I told you that feeling isn't some personal flaw? It's actually a bug in our mental operating system. And today, we're going to learn how to fix it.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to start by identifying this binary bias bug. Then we'll upgrade your identity to a decision architect. After that, we'll walk through the 3 core steps of the probability protocol: certainty deletion, the value audit, and integrating variance. And finally, we'll tie it all together so you can start to think like a casino. Let's jump in.
All right, first things first, we've got to run a diagnostic on our own thinking. We need to pinpoint the primitive glitch in our neural OS that causes that awful strategic stagnation and holds so many of us back. And here it is. It's called binary thinking. This is the absolute root of the problem. It's this default setting where we see the world in black and white, success or failure, right or wrong, win or loss. Should I take this job, yes or no? It's an old, outdated piece of code.
And that's exactly why you feel so stuck. You're trying to shove this incredibly complex, high-resolution world into a tiny, low-resolution box. You're hunting for a guarantee, for 100% certainty of success, but that guarantee just doesn't exist. This is the #1 reason we get paralyzed.
Now look at the difference here. It's night and day. Binary thinking is always hunting for the right answer. But systems thinking, which is the upgrade we're installing, it doesn't even ask, will this work? Instead it asks, what's the probability of different outcomes? It swaps that illusion of certainty for the actual power of expected value. And all that means is, if you could make this exact same choice 1,000 times, what would the average result be? It's about seeing the bigger picture.
So, okay, enough about the problem. Let's talk about the solution. This is about making a fundamental identity shift. We're going to move from being a gambler who's just hoping for good luck to a genuine high-performance thinker. This is our new identity, a decision architect. A decision architect doesn't just cross their fingers and hope for their best. No, they engineer outcomes by understanding this whole landscape of probabilities. They don't just make decisions, they literally design them.
And here's the best part. This isn't just some abstract idea. It's a practical, real-world toolkit. We're about to break down the 3 simple but incredibly powerful steps of the probability protocol that you can literally start using the second this is over.
All right, step 1. To master high-performance psychology, this is where you start. It might sound small, but it's huge. We have to change the actual words we use. We need to erase the language of false certainty from our vocabulary. And here's exactly how you do it. First, just delete absolute words. Words like will, won't, always, and never. Get rid of them. Second, Replace them with percentage estimates. So instead of saying, this business idea will work, you say, I think there's a 70% chance of a positive outcome. And third, for every big move, map out 3 scenarios: the best case, the median case, and the failure case, and assign a probability to each. This forces your brain to see the whole spectrum.
Okay, next up, step 2. We need a mental tool to push past that gut-wrenching fear of a single loss, because that's what keeps us trapped in that binary way of thinking. And we're going to do it by using the power of scale.
This one question right here, this is your value audit. Ask yourself this exact question. What it does is it forces your neural OS to zoom all the way out. It makes you look past the immediate emotional punch of one potential bad outcome. And instead, it makes you calculate that expected value over the long run.
This image says it all, doesn't it? This is the entire mental shift. You're going from being totally fixated on one roll of the dice to thinking like the house, which sees thousands of rolls and knows that over time, the statistical edge is all that matters.
And that leads us right into the final and maybe the most powerful step of the whole protocol. We call it systemic variance integration. And it's all about completely reframing how you think about failure.
Let that sink in for a second. A loss is not a mistake. It's not a sign that you screwed up. It is a mandatory, expected, and necessary cost of doing business if you want to achieve big things. Think about it. A venture capitalist expects most of their investments to go to zero because they know the one huge win will more than cover all those losses. Losses are just part of the system.
So now let's put all the pieces together. We're going to use one final powerful analogy that really cements this new way of thinking and shows you how to activate your full high-bandwidth mind.
Look, you have a supercomputer between your ears, a high-bandwidth mind. It's time to stop thinking like a coin and start operating like a casino. A coin or a gambler playing with that coin is obsessed with a single flip, win or lose. But a casino runs a system. It doesn't care about one person winning a hand of blackjack. It expects it. It's a calculated loss because it knows that over thousands and thousands of hands, its tiny probabilistic edge means it will always come out ahead. That's using your full mental bandwidth.
So here are the key takeaways, the new operating instructions for you as a decision architect. First, stop looking for certainty. It's a mirage. Start architecting your decisions instead. Swap out those absolute words for probabilities. Evaluate your choices based on their long-term expected value. And accept that variance, those losses, are just part of the system. It's time to stop guessing and start calculating.
So there you have it. The protocol is yours now. The real work begins by applying it. So look at the big decisions in front of you, the opportunities, the challenges. Remember, you have a high bandwidth mind. Stop thinking like a coin. Start thinking like a casino. The question isn't whether you'll make the right choice. The question is, which decision will you architect first? If you're ready to get started, comment probability below, and we'll send you our Decision Architect's calibration sheet to help you do just that.